Welcome to BTFDtv. This is the Macro Tourist Hour. And if you've ever watched any of these episodes, you know that during the first few moments we go to Uncle Bob, and he gives us an update on politics in D.C. The issues are that we're about to have an election, so the politics are not really the normal politics at this point. Uncle Bob, do you have any quick comments before we start talking about world events?
Yeah, well, I mean, you raised the interesting point. We're basically 2 weeks out. 2 weeks from Tuesday will be the congressional elections and 1/3 of the Senate. The politicians who are elected to serve their citizenry are all out at home. None of them are in D.C. doing any work. They don't find...
Unless they just live there and don't go home.
Well, they find time to politic, go on TV, and spout nonsense, but that's about it. And our one mention of Ebola, Ebola has kind of been the critical issue this week in Washington. The big news was on Friday that the White House designated a person to deal with the messaging on Ebola, who was, of course, termed then the Ebola czar. He is a political hack.
He has no medical or science background.
Of course not. Of course not. Because the administration just wanted somebody that they were comfortable with. Because Thomas Frieden, head of the CDC, was seen as incapable of kind of messaging around it. And frankly, that's all this White House is really concerned about is messaging, not really the substance of it. So.
Well, we've got a new guest, so why don't we go directly to him, and then we have Nicola joining us. She'll drop in at any point and just start joining us. So until she does that, Colin, welcome to the Macro Tourist Hour.
I'm here too.
Oh,
Thanks
there she is. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what your focus is, and then we're going to go to some economic discussions. One of them, to cue everyone up, is that there's a new stress test running around Europe, and it appears that Germany might have some speed bump issues, specifically some subs that are not very healthy. So introduce yourself, and then let's pick up the German topic.
Sure. I'm an economics and statistics student at University College Dublin here in Ireland. I've been trading fixed income and FX for a couple of years. I'm a pretty long-term investor, so I'm not so much a trader. Most of my positions are on a pretty long-term horizon. So I'm entirely focused on fundamentals. I'm not really bothered about what happens over the course of a couple of days or weeks. So it's entirely fundamental analysis that I use.
All right, thank you. Have you been following the stress tests being set up in Europe and the implications that are coming out on them?
Sure. I mean, you look at what's gone on in Europe over the last couple of years, and I mean, obviously, I've been bang in the middle of it, unfortunately. I mean, it's more a demand issue than a supply issue. I think that for sure, once we get the AQR out of the way, it will bring a little bit of confidence to the market. Demand might pick up a little bit. You might see a little bit of compression in spreads for SME credit and so on, but I'm really not too bothered about it. I think it's mainly a demand issue. I don't think it's going to be a game changer for the Eurozone at all.
All right. Darlin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Colin. Hi,
hello.
Colin. Nice to meet you.
And you?
Well, I'm a completely technical trader.
I just want to say, on your last show, you made a major call on crude, which I think became a fat pitch. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did. What a nice drop we saw. Then we had a little bounce after I said it, but yeah, definitely that one worked. We're not quite there, but we're on pretty good. 81 is pretty good technical Fibonacci support, and the dollar. The dollar's taking a bit of a rest from its race higher. So I think that we could have quite a nice bounce here in crude. Although ultimately, there is the chance that we go back and we test that range bottom, in the 70s. 78, 76. But yeah, we definitely hit my target and went a little bit further.
So what are you calling for? What's your next big fat pitch? Let's just start there.
Ooh, do you know, I kind of really like gold.
Gold. That's been out of favor
and
for a bit.
nobody likes it. I know, but I think you know, I'm not quite sure on the dollar whether this correction is over and we've got another leg just about to happen, or whether we'll see it. Like, it's definitely corrective when you look at most of the currencies against the dollar, like especially the euro, which is such a big component. This bounce is definitely corrective. Do we have another wave, or is the dollar about to take off again? I'm not 100% convinced either way, but this week will tell us.
Right. So this week will be a key point.
Yeah, and when you look at gold and silver, like silver's really flagging and lagging and not getting up much off the floor, whereas gold is doing quite nicely relatively, and that says to me that it's not just about the dollar. People are buying gold because it's pretty good technical levels too. So I quite like gold. I'll know this. Yeah, I think we bounce here, and I'm leaning towards another wave. So the currencies do a little bit more recovering against the dollar. We'll see a bit more of recovery for at least another week in crude, and I do like gold.
All right.
And I think stocks this week will bounce, definitely.
Okay. So you're looking for a bounce in equities.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I sort of lean towards the equities have sort of topped, but I think that this is you know, everybody got very scared very quickly, too scared too quickly. So this is bounce week.
I actually agree with you. You know, these things never go straight up or straight down, and even when they do, they will go out of their way to make it as hard as possible.
Exactly.
So, all right. So let's go geopolitical for a moment. We've discussed the market for a few seconds here. Thoughts on hunt for Red October in Sweden right now? Have you guys been following that?
Are we talking about a submarine?
Yes, we're talking about a missing submarine, the only typhoon that still goes to sea.
I have been following that a little bit. It's all quite strange, isn't it?
Yeah, there are a couple of emergency holy shit messages. First one not. This is the interesting thing. The first one supposedly was not encrypted. Second one was. And it was coming from the Swedish I can't even say that damn word.
Archipelago.
Archipelago.
I'm not even going to try, all right? Yeah, so they've broadcasted twice. It appears that Russia has sent a boat that is extremely good at looking at the bottom of the ocean to go visit that area while denying everything. And Russia has one typhoon that still runs around. They have two that are in mothballs. But the one that's been running around is the one that they use for all of their test launches for that new missile system, which is supposed to be put in the next generation subs. And if this boat has in fact had some issues, Russia will basically not be able to test their new missile system for a while. And so that's a bit of an interesting issue, considering some implications about their Navy and their other submarine force. So any thoughts from you guys on this ongoing adventure? Sweden made the comment about it could turn into a live fire event. So Sweden was taking it very serious. Thoughts?
Sweden's taking it very seriously that the sub's missing just outside Sweden, you mean?
It's inside Sweden's waters.
Yeah. Like, it's weird that nobody's heard from it, though, but that's what they do. They go and sneak around, don't they? You're not supposed to know where they are.
Until they get stuck on a rock and they can't get off of it.
Then you feel
then they got
Then
to
you
call
feel
home.
bad for all the guys on it, don't you? Like, there's quite a lot of guys on a submarine, you know.
Yeah, there is. This is the world's largest submarine. It's not exactly a small tin can.
No, like that'll be pretty major if they lose it.
It would, in fact. Yes. Uncle Bob, have you been following the story?
I really haven't, Jack. As I was saying to Nicola in our green room, I have been trying to focus on books on the weekend and kind of gotten off Twitter and off the rigmarole. I did my standard while I was cooking this morning. I did my standard fare with the news shows, but this wasn't mentioned, so I really have virtually no insight.
All right. In very simple terms, Russia had built a fleet of Typhoon, which is the largest submarines ever built, much larger than anything Americans made, and they've scrapped about half of the fleet. I believe there was 8 originally ordered. They built 6. 3 of them have been scrapped already. 3 of them were still in, we'll call it reserve or use state. 2 were in reserves. Were going to be chopped up, but then they announced 2 years ago that they were going to refurb them into cruise missile launchers. Basically what's happened is that the missiles that these boats launched have all been retired, so there's no missiles to actually put in them. So they were going to refurb 2 of them, and then there's the oldest one, which had already been rebuilt once, so arguably it's the newest condition boat of theirs. It had 1 launch tube that had been converted to use the newest technology for the newest missile that they're developing for the next generation subs that they plan on building. So this is really their test bed, and it would be the boat that they would use to launch from international waters to do a missile test, and they've had some luck and some unluck testing this new missile. Sometimes they take off and fly, and sometimes they don't fly very well. So there's some real political whoops if the boomer that's used for launching is found sitting inside of Sweden's waters, stuck on a rock. It would cause issues for the Russian Navy at multiple levels. I'll just leave it at that.
What, more than Ukraine, you mean? And sanctions?
Yeah, actually, because this one is like a whole weapons class, right? It's the test bed for their next series of boats that are all supposed to be built. This is their big kahuna, and they only have 1 running. And if they parked it on a rock in the middle of Sweden...
You know, though, in the Cold War, like, those submarines are designed to be able to go quiet and silent and hide for literally weeks.
4 months. This one was designed for 4 months.
4 months? Yeah, like, so...
you have a problem, though, if you hit a rock and you've sunk and you're sitting on the bottom, but...
I know, but you have to wait 4 months to find out, don't you?
Well, in this case, no. This... it's a very unique design that the Typhoons have. They have multiple pressurized systems. So it actually has like 5 different systems. You could hit a rock and be sunk, and 3/4 of the boat, everyone could be fine. And so you're just kind of sitting there going, how do we call home?
Oh, except, no, when you're all quiet, you're not even allowed to tap your fingers, I don't think.
Well, I think when you hit a rock and you can't move, then you have to call home.
Yeah, probably. Oh, that's funny.
So, you got to find something to laugh at in this world. So you're bullish on gold, which is probably
I'm a little bit
unused in probably 2-4 years.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while, so we'll see.
It's like
but I am.
Partner of yours.
Sorry?
I said it's an old dance partner of yours that you're returning to.
Yeah, I do like. Like down. Well, the way down though, I kind of preferred silver down, but I like gold. Yeah, I like gold to bounce now.
Thoughts on gold, silver? The crazy cousin. Thoughts on silver, or is it's not showing anything?
No, and copper looks like it's bottom. No, silver's really lagging. Like the others are really lagging, and there's really rubbish news out there for iron. Iron ore and all the other industrial metals have had a really rough time of it. But gold looks a little sparkly to me.
All right. Colin, do you have anything you want to dive into in economic terms? Any topics you would like us to roundtable?
Sure. I mean, I suppose everybody's been focusing on what's going on in the market over the last week. It's been pretty insane. I mean, Wednesday was, I've never really seen anything like Wednesday. You know, stocks can go up and down, but I've never seen the 10-year move 40 pips up and down in a single day before. You know, people are...
discovered liquidity.
Prop traders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I actually heard from two long-term bond traders on the CME that they had information, and I got three different stories. Well, two different stories. The same, all three of the people said that a West Coast bond firm blew up. Now, I have not heard anything officially about that since, before or since. Then subsequently, somebody said that the Bank of Japan had told Japanese bond traders to stop shorting U.S. Treasuries. I have no idea if there's any legitimacy to that, but the move in bonds was ginormous. Any thoughts?
I heard about three hedge funds blowing up. I mean, there was a new one coming out every hour. I didn't hear the Japan story. But I mean, you know, what to take out of it fundamentals wise? I mean, Fed funds futures extended a little bit. I think that people are getting a little bit worried about the economy a little bit more. A lot of people have been looking at break-evens about 5 years out, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Given the move in oil, it's completely natural for inflation expectations to fall a little bit, and now people are talking about QE4 and the Fed delaying the hike. I think it's all nice, and I actually thought that Wednesday was a nice opportunity to short some of the front end. So, yeah, I don't really think that there's fundamentally much to really take out of what's going on this week.
I don't know about that, but I know some prop traders that were carted out this week. It was very ugly in bonds. And people who don't know what they were talking about break-evens and the 5-year and the 2-year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, this is why I don't focus on what happens over the course of a couple of days, because the market go mad and you can get blown up and there's your career over.
So, yeah, no, so, some people like that unfortunately didn't have good weeks. So, but yeah, that was a wild move, definitely.
So for our audience who might be equity idiots, what did it do?
That's me.
It scared everybody.
So how big was the move? Put a little context to this.
Well, we dropped off about 3% and we closed flat, which was incredibly bullish. I don't pay much attention to stocks. I don't trade index futures or anything of the sort, so I'm not your man for that, I'm afraid.
We're pretty much flat. We're pretty much flat on the year now, aren't we? So it's not exactly a major disaster. You know, you can go back a couple of years and draw a rising channel that we've been moving up in, and we just hit the bottom rail of it. Really, like we haven't. There's no technical damage yet. So.
Yeah. I mean, again, as somebody who looks at fundamentals, again, looking at revenue, profits, and so on, I mean, the outlook is you know, I wouldn't see it as bearish. There's been a massive disconnect between the business cycle and the cycle in asset prices, mainly due to the Fed, and that needs to. I mean, that gap needs to close a little bit. Now, how that happens, I don't really know. It depends if the economy slows down, and we might get. I don't know. I mean, people have been talking about an 87 style crash. I'm not going to predict that, but you know, the gap needs to be closed somehow. And I mean, I think the stocks will probably just return 5-6% for the next 5-6 years on an annual basis. And you know, I don't really think again that there's much to take out of it from a fundamental point of view.
That's at least according to the reports I read and the people that I listen to. I mean, I think that that's very optimistic. Although, you know, the one thing we haven't talked about that happened on Wednesday was when the market was tanking, Bullard came back on, who's a known dove on the Federal Reserve, a non-voting member, I believe, at this point in time. and said, well, we really need to reconsider, quantitative easing. And so I think what is going to happen is that the Fed is going to go back to quantitative easing. When exactly, I don't know.
Oh, no,
I
really?
think clearly they will. Clearly
Because I heard that
couldn't
rumor and
disagree
I
more.
just laughed. I just laughed. I thought it's somebody making an excuse, like trying to move the market because it's ridiculous.
Well,
Really?
Bob,
I'm no expert at this, but has any central bank ever exited quantitative easing?
Well, like who's ever done it before? Japan?
Yeah, I
Like,
guess Japan's done it, and irretrievably so, perhaps.
it's not a normal
Yeah.
policy, but I mean, you talk about exiting in terms of what the definition is. I mean, as it is, we're scheduled to finish up QE this month or next month.
Well, no, in a week.
Sure,
This
yeah.
week.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, sure. Well, I mean, Bullard has said, maybe we should leave it off till December. But the point is, purchases are going to stop. Now, the balance sheet will stay bloated, but that doesn't really matter because due to IOER and reverse repo, the Fed can still raise rates. But I don't really see any fundamental reason for the Fed to return to QE in the near future anyway. I mean, look, we're nearly at full employment. Capacity utilization is pretty high. And I have no reason to think that we're not going to get a hike around next summer. I mean, 5 years out, who knows? I mean, Jeff Gundlach, for example, thinks that we're going to go back to QE because the Fed is going to have to control fiscal deficits and bring down interest costs, which I don't agree with, but whatever. But I mean, what's your view on why the Fed would return to QE? Why do you think there's a fundamental reason for that?
Well, because I think that the theory goes that basically they have supported asset prices. That by driving down the rates of bonds, that money has chased yield, and in chasing yield has driven up equity prices, for lack of a better word. And understand that there is a myriad of interests that impacts. You will hear in the U.S. press the constant retort, well, such a small proportion of people really hold equities individually, and that is absolutely true, and it's decreased significantly over the past 15, 20 years. But the fact is that tons of money is held for pension funds, and that is state governments, municipal governments,
That's very true.
county governments, and it is ginormous. And these various entities, states, municipalities, counties, throughout the United States, let's not even focus on Illinois, that train wreck, are totally tied to this. And not only, well, let's put it, they have been underfunding this forever. That is, politicians have been making promises of future payments that people ostensibly, make plans on, retirement plans, and if they are to let the market free fall, say 25%, 30%, 35%, you're going to have municipal state bankruptcies all over the map. Absolute Armageddon in the United States.
Yeah, I tweeted a bit about this the other night in terms of entitlement reform that we're going to need to see over the next couple of years. I know that Ray Dalio did a piece a couple of months ago about the upcoming pensions crisis, and he's not a guy to flippantly predict crises left, right, and centre. But there are massive unfunded liabilities that I think it's going to be a big issue ahead of 2016. I mean, I've been a massive proponent of fiscal stimulus over the last couple of years in terms of infrastructure and so on, but I think we really need to start looking at entitlement reform over the next couple of years, because it is going to blow out deficits and it's going to be a problem.
Well, I mean, you raise an interesting point, but here's where your practical reality kind of interacts with my political hat, because I know that the politicians who have had, basically in the United States, where we have the world's reserve currency, they had 7 years to make these decisions, make tough decisions. Have they done anything to address it? Absolutely, metaphysically, zero, nothing.
Sure.
And it's not on the table. We're facing an election here, a major election that's coming up. Has one person even spoken of it? I haven't heard it. Have you heard it, Jack? I mean, well, I watch political news ad nauseum. It hasn't happened. It's not even remotely under consideration, and
Sure,
that
look,
is shameful.
Yeah, I hate politics as much as you, so I mean, again, it's just something that we've not given enough attention to, but it's going to kind of blow up in our faces towards the end of this decade, I think. So,
Right,
God knows how it's going to play out.
Politics or politicians?
Is there a difference?
Well, no, there is a difference. It used to be. I heard somebody talk about a career in politics today. And that's such an interesting turn of a phrase, a career in politics. Let's just think about that for a moment. Is that a career? Is that a career? Politics is a career now? Help me. Come on.
No, it shouldn't be. No, I agree.
It shouldn't be. It never was, right?
No. People came from all walks of life. But and the civil servants, the permanent staff, they're the career government people, but they're the bureaucrats, they're not the representatives, right?
Yes, precisely correct, Nicola. And the issue is, in all these, you just had this person that's gotten a lot of political press in the United States as the person that was kind of the point person on this whole IRS scandal. I don't know if you guys have heard about it much over there. But anyway, Lois Lerner recently retired from the Internal Revenue Service. And she had a couple other civil service jobs before. Guess how much she's making per year as a retired person? $100,000. And she will receive that amount annually for the rest of her life.
It's really shocking.
How can we pay that money? We don't have that money. Everywhere else in the United States, every other company has gone through a 401k system, which is another pension vehicle, which really, now I put on my former hat, which I used to be a tax attorney back in the day. 401ks were an obscure little facet of the tax code that was never really meant for what it's become. But it is now the primary savings vehicle for people in the private sector. And yet, there's been no impetus, not even a scintilla of impetus, not amongst Republicans, not amongst Democrats, not amongst anybody to challenge this system. It's unworkable, absolutely unworkable.
All right.
All right.
So we had a good rant there for a moment. So, quick question looking forward. What do you guys in Europe see as the most important aspects of dealing with the European issues, economically speaking? What are you looking for over the next 6 weeks going into the major holidays? And do you expect that there's going to be any significant crises between now and New Year's?
Well, negative yields on the bonds, deflation.
Deflation, not inflation.
Well, that's what everybody's talking about in Europe, isn't it? Deflation, yeah. There's certainly no inflation in Europe. No, there's the only inflation that really has been in asset prices.
I was going to say in bonds issued.
I think they tried to. Yeah, and bonds issued like hugely. Yes, corporate bonds, ridiculous. But there really hasn't been. There's no inflation in wages, is there? So
no.
I really don't know how this is going to play out over the next couple of years. I think the economy is starting to bottom a little bit. I don't really think that we're going to get much dynamism over the next couple of months. And then we've got to look at, again, we go back to politics. You look at the strides that Le Pen has made in France, for example, and the situation in Greece. I really, really can't see a way out of this other than a European breakup, a Eurozone breakup.
Thoughts on Greece? Is it true that they're up for their fourth bailout? Are we at 4 bailouts now?
Yeah, that's true.
And are they seriously negotiating a fourth bailout? Is that where we're at?
That's what we hear, yeah.
It's all on the QT right now.
So, well, that's definitely the chat anyway. Yeah.
I heard a rumor that somehow Paris is working with the EU to get clearance. I got a fly attacking me, sorry. That the EU and Paris is figuring out some way to pass the next major deficit budget that wouldn't clear normal terms or something. And they're getting like a fast track for it, because like France is threatening to either, I guess, do something about their debt, or if they don't, they need to do something else, and they're trying to get permission for that. Thoughts? I mean, is France a basket case right now? Is that a true statement?
It is a basket case. They've all agreed that they're, to austerity, and they're only going to run a certain size deficit. So if it's any bigger than that, then everybody else is subsidising them, aren't they? So.
Sure. I think that this is what really matters in Europe. What's going to happen on the fiscal side? And Mario Draghi has been pushing for some kind of fiscal stimulus, not so directly, but he's been mentioning that we need some flexibility on the fiscal side over the next couple of years. I mean, when it comes to potential QE in Europe, I really don't see it having that big an effect. Term premiums are already incredibly low. Yield curve's incredibly flat. I just don't really see what else the European Central Bank can do except for talk, as Draghi has done brilliantly over the last couple of years. But I mean that can only go on for so long. Again, we need fiscal stimulus, and whether the Germans budge on that, God knows really.
They need to, yeah, but there still isn't the mechanism for them to do QE yet, so there still isn't the.
Sure, but as I said,
not quite there yet.
Yeah, personally, I really don't see it having that big an impact, even if they do.
No, I agree.
QE. Sure.
Well, so you buy up bonds off of bank balance sheets, but they're not loaning money anymore, right? I mean, in fresh money, right? No one's running around saying, I need funds, damn it. Or if they are saying it, they're not getting the funds.
Sure, but like in the US, I mean,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Colin.
The real purpose of QE is, again, to push down long-term yields and push people into risk assets such as corporate bonds, equities, and so on. It's not really giving banks reserves or anything of the sort. The ECB's balance sheet in the grand scheme is pretty irrelevant in my opinion. Again, it's just about making it more affordable for corporates to borrow and people to invest, and pushing down mortgage yields and so on.
But are corporates borrowing? Is there some new magical supply of?
Oh no!
I mean, over here we don't. I mean, there's some talk about CLOs coming back a little bit, but there's no engine that's just generating bonds again, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why QE is running out in the U.S. at one level. They're running out of shit to buy.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
sure. I mean.
True.
You sit on $4 trillion and you don't let it move around. That's stagnation, kids. That's not growth.
But it can't move around, Jack. I mean, it stays on the bank's balance sheets. No matter what, it doesn't matter if banks lend out money. It still stays on the banking system's balance sheet. I mean, again, banks create money. They don't need the $4 trillion stays there. It doesn't really matter.
Do you remember SIVs, special investment vehicles? It doesn't stay on banks' balance sheets.
Sure, no, I'm talking about the money that central bank pumped into the banking system.
They build sieves.
Sure. No, but
he's
I'm talking
exactly
about the QE.
right. It doesn't go anywhere further than the bank's vault, and then they go and do something else with it. It's really QE is really an asset swap thing. It's not.
Yes, but it's not doing anything for the system.
No, it doesn't. No, because it doesn't go beyond.
It actually doesn't go.
Well, it does. It does. It forces them into risk assets, which makes them look much more attractive to everybody and makes everything look wonderful out there to cheer people up and get them into risk assets.
If you go back to around late 2011, start of 2012, the housing market was starting to pick up. What did you see? Well, I mean, you saw mortgage MBS. You could get a 30-year mortgage for around 4%. we were talking about historic lows. I mean, that's the purpose of QE. It's to make it more affordable for people to borrow money. Again, it's nothing to do with banks' balance sheet.
Yeah, but borrowing the mortgage in the U.S. right now is at 5 to 6% of its old run rate. 5 to 6%. There's no fucking transmission here to engage.
Well, but that's the other argument. That's the other side of the argument, is in fact that really, while quantitative easing ostensibly might have been meant for the purpose that Colin just spoke to, which is to transmit it through the economy, what banks have utilized it for is simply securing their own balance sheets, which were horrific.
Yes.
And they're still doing that. I mean, if anybody looked at Bank of America, that I used to play short for years, between 2000.
Hey, are you talking your book again?
No, well, it hasn't been my book in quite some time, but they recently came out with earnings, and they actually just pooped the bed. They just pooped the bed. But the problem is that quantitative easing, as Colin, I absolutely agree with you that at its core, it's trying to transmit more money into the marketplace. But the fact is that ended. That hasn't happened.
We in the U.S. have no mechanism to take that into a mortgage.
Some asset prices, let's face it, got a massive boost from QE, but that was the only inflation. We certainly didn't get inflation anywhere else, did we?
Stock prices.
Sure, but if asset prices get a boost, you get a massive wealth effect, and that's boosted the economy, in my opinion, anyway.
And housing, certainly we've had it's picked up housing in most countries.
All right, I got a question. Implications of tax change on Ireland.
Sorry, say that again.
Which
the implications of changing the tax code in Ireland, specifically for the Googles.
The corporate tax code.
Yeah, it's been quite a big thing over here for the last couple of weeks. I mean, really, one of the selling points, if you listen to any speech from an Irish politician, one of the selling points of our industrial base is the low tax rate. I mean, you go back to late 70s, early 80s, in Ireland, we had a lot of unemployment, and something needed to change. There was a lot of structural unemployment. Something needed to change, and the real revolution in Ireland came from attracting multinationals through corporate taxation and the education system. And if that goes, if the tax rate has to go up to, let's say, 16, 17%, it's going to be a massive, massive problem for Ireland. And I think, again, it will provoke a lot of pushback politically, because, a few people have been saying it this week, Ireland is finally starting to turn around. And suddenly people want to kind of take something back out of that. I mean, whether that's going to be okay politically, I mean, I don't really see it.
I've been reading a lot of those kind of headlines this week. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of those kind of headlines this week. The mulled Celtic tiger is back and ready to roar again. And
Celtic tiger.
Yeah. Celtic tiger, whatever
Celtic tiger. Yeah.
Celtic.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, I screw every word up. It's part of the show.
It's part of your charm, Jack, or something there. But the whole issue, and I hear Colin's words very readily, because I actually had visited Ireland for the first time, I think, in about 1984, and then I was subsequently back there just a couple of years ago. But I dealt with Ireland matters as a tax attorney quite a bit, and the Irish tax code, it basically intrigued a couple of different multinationals, primarily those in the tech industry and the pharmaceuticals industry, and it was used as a vehicle not only to enjoy the lower tax rate, but really to flush worldwide earnings, that is, monies earned outside the United States, into a vehicle that was highly tax effective, and just kind of sat there. And what is very interesting to me about the whole Irish tax code issue is that it has laid somewhat dormant from any discussion until just recently. And we had one of your fellow countrymen on not long ago on this show talking about the enormous growth rates, or I should say recovery rates in Ireland, because I also know quite well the tremendous downturn that you experienced there. But this all leads back to whether in fact anything will happen in Ireland is obviously creates a huge political situation there. But of course, our feckless clowns that we call politicians here, the last thing that they like to deal with is tax code thing. We haven't had meaningful tax reform here
since '86, 30 years.
Yeah, that's about right. Probably '86, and
then it was read my lips around '90.
Well, but that was mere incremental. That wasn't any fundamental changes. So it's the last thing that they want to deal with. It's actually written by staffers, and staffers don't even write legislation in the United States anymore. It's lobbyists that write it for the staffers that then feed it to the politicians. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious. But clearly, having dealt with it for a long time, the worldwide tax code or the worldwide taxation of profits in the U.S. is absolutely unworkable. But under the current system of the two criminal gangs who run this country, it's not going to change anytime soon. So we'll see.
All right. So do we have any topics that we would like to address? Let's start with the lady.
Ooh, not right now.
All right. I've got a war one. We'll go to the ISIS clowns. They appear to have surrounded a city, and I wanted to call it Kobane, but Uncle Bob.
That was Kurt. That was the guy.
Oh yeah.
Kobane.
While they're attacking it, the U.S. has finally started to use pinpoint striking, and we worked with some of the locals to pinpoint exactly where they wanted the bombs to actually hit. And two interesting aspects from this part of the combat streak. One, there was a building where I guess a good chunk of their leadership was at, and what you would call the real, like what you call the sergeants, the people know what they're doing. And the bomb hit it nicely, and we killed everyone inside the building, supposedly. The end point being that they've taken a major hit to leadership and have started calling up the equivalent of the ISIS police, which I guess is the thugs that stay at home, because they're running out of crack troops trying to take this town. And one of the cases is they attacked the defenders, and the defenders were defending a hospital, and the hospital was already abandoned, and so they pre-set it up with explosives and then allowed themselves to be overran. ISIS charged into the building to swarm it, and then they dropped the building on them. And so numbers coming out of Iraq is showing losses in the hundreds, which is interesting from a perspective that for the first time ever, this organization, which is rolled, all of a sudden is running into reality. And so from here, politically, things might start becoming interesting. Just before we go to our drop-in gentleman, has anyone heard about the combat going on between Iran and Pakistan?
No.
It appears that some Iranians have been charging across the border and shooting Pakistanis, to the point that the ambassador has been called, formal complaints have been filed, and the Pakis...
Are you sure this isn't another story out of Israel? They're always trying to pin it on Iran.
No. This one's an Iran-Paki event, of all things.
I have people tell me that just about anything that goes wrong in the Middle East, it's all Iran's fault.
You know what? I'm just commenting that Pakistan has called Iran's ambassador forward and said, "Why the fuck are you killing our border guards?"
Okay, why would Iran, a non-nuclear country, pick a fight with Pakistan, a massive nuclear country?
I have no idea, but that's between them, it appears.
Right.
So, kind of hard to pin that on someone else if they're shooting at each other. The second one is North Korea and South Korea. Crazy Kim showed back up, and when he showed back up, though, everyone's still shooting at each other. Target practice across the DMZ is an active sport in the Koreas again.
Well, let's just talk to my buddy Kim, who actually, you know, they did.
Did he hang out on your couch? Is that true?
Well, he's still hanging out on my couch. You know, that video, there was nothing in that video that necessarily confirmed that it was of recent vintage.
That's a fair comment. That's a very fair comment.
Yeah, it is a very fair comment, I think. The other thing is that what North Korea does is they carefully monitor U.S. news, in particular CNN. They were aware that CNN was covering the fact that, you know, my buddy Kim, who's sitting on the couch drinking scotch and eating chocolates, it had not been seen for a while. So that combined with the interesting entree that North Korea made into South Korea with, I believe, the number 2 and number 3 guys in the North Korean.
Well, that was just it. Is all of a sudden they were talking unification, and now they're shooting at each other daily. So I was kind of wondering if anyone had any color on that. Nope. All right. Sapien, welcome back. We have a fixed income kid who has joined us, and I think the two of you would speak the same language. Colin, I'd like to introduce you to Sapien. He knows a bit about blowing up turkeys with fixed income.
No. I never. It's a pleasure to meet you, Colin. I think we do follow each other. No. You know, I mean, my little happy world of asset-backed securities, fixed income asset-backed securities, are more or less deader than a doornail. I mean, the only things that you're seeing these days are CMBS, on the American side, are CMBS and credit cards and autos. I'm sorry, I forgot about autos. Up and down.
What about student loans? Are you guys making market in student loans?
Student loans continue, but remember, those things I don't really consider as part of the mainstream in the sense of they're pretty much guaranteed, and also it doesn't matter if if they
BK, they still got to pay.
That's exactly right. If you BK, you still got to pay, and in fact, that's going to be. While I don't, and of course I would rely on Bob to let me know if I'm wrong in this statement, but I don't think I am. You know, we're going to have a real problem in the United States with housing formation and the initiation of first-time home buyers, while so many of these college students who are now working and so forth, or are working beneath their education levels, cannot pay off their student loans, which means they continue to accrue, they continue to negatively amortize, and I don't see anything fundamentally changing that. I mean, if you really wanted to start the housing market, I don't think you should do loan forgiveness. I think you should do student loan instead of mortgage forgiveness, student loan forgiveness. I think that'll have a much higher probability of jump-starting both the mortgage economy as well as the overall economy. But given the way the laws are written in favor of the investor making these things BK-proof, you know, I am.
Isn't it the average kid is $30,000 in debt now in the U.S. or something like that?
No, it's higher. When they first get out of college, the number I heard, and I'll have to double check it with some of my Sally Mae friends, but the number I heard was somewhere in the order of 45 to 50,000, and then after about 3 or 4 years, that number drops up quite considerably. Plus, you also have a lot of students, and that's just out of undergraduate. You also have that's undergrad, and then you also had a lot of students who couldn't find a job with their art history majors or their philosophy majors, and not that those aren't great majors, but
there's a surplus of liberal art degreed individuals.
Well, it's just that I don't think the market price thinks that there's value to it anymore, unlike what it was, say, when I went to school. I have a liberal arts degree. It just happens to be in economics, and we lost Colin because I think I'm boring the crap out of him. I bore the crap out of a lot of people. I mean, right now Bob is barely staying awake. If it wasn't
I'm paying attention, getting ready to interject.
Those little blue pills not working so well, Bob. Sorry, just kidding.
No. Let's talk about this student debt thing, because I think it's a ginormous issue, and I don't think. Great. I think that people tend to think of it in light of real colleges, real 4-year degree colleges. But I've read a lot of pieces on this, and it is more pronounced. The problem really lies not even in so much of those poster children, that went to Princeton and walk away with $110,000 in debt, again with their art history degree. And can't find gainful employment, but it's the guy that goes to the technical school, that's a for-profit technical school, who takes out the loan, or the kid that goes to the for-profit college and then immediately drops out thereafter, and never even getting a skill set that they can turn into money to pay these things off. I mean, it's a metaphysical disaster, and the Democrats in this country have decided it's a great strategy to keep pushing these loans, and you know what? That dog don't hunt, because there's really not jobs that they can fill that can actually pay those amounts.
Well, I agree with you, Bob, but there's also the other piece of it, which is not only is it that they don't graduate the undergraduate, which I think is a big deal. If you don't finish it with all these loans, you're in deep, deep trouble. The other issue is that you're also seeing this within the graduate program. So, for instance, if you have, if you've gone to a good school, you're now in a graduate program on, you get a master's in medieval art history. Which is fine, and there's a lot of stuff there from an intellectual point of view. But if you don't continue on to the PhD, the likelihood of you finding a job is remote. Even with a PhD, funding for these programs in these colleges is not what it used to be, because colleges now are going to spend money on where they're going to be the big ticket items. And my daughter graduated Bryn Mawr, the second largest major by itself, surprisingly, was mathematics, because that's where the bid is. So, it's really difficult. And in one sense, being the liberal of the group, as always, I do bemoan the fact that we are giving up on the intellectualism and the liberal arts, which I do believe in, and I'm a strong believer in the liberal arts. I do think people should have a well-rounded view of the world.
Shouldn't that be required at the 2-year college level, and then try to put some knowledge into the kids for the next 2?
Well, I mean, that's what liberal arts colleges do, really, right? I mean, you do a 2-year Common Core, and then you move on to something else. But the question is if you have a passion and ability for something that doesn't have a big bid, do you shunt that level of academia and research? And then it really becomes a question for people is whether you consider education and understanding of the world as a
value-added asset.
Well, no. It's not even a value-added. It's infrastructure, right? What do governments do? Governments pay for infrastructure, right? Military is an infrastructure. Electrical lines really are infrastructure. That's why it's because we're not having the government infrastructure our electrical lines are, hundreds of years. I would almost say 100 years behind everybody else.
Right. Hold on. Hold on. I want to actually grab that and give a data point. Korea right now is testing a 10 gigabyte connection for civilian home connection. Yeah, we're talking downloading a 1 gigabyte file in 0.8. Right? Bam, done. What do we have here if we're lucky? I think I wanted.
Ass is what we have here. Ass.
The U.S. has the highest priced, lowest speed internet on the planet. There's something wrong with that.
It's because we don't buy into the idea that government pays for infrastructure as a country.
Well, I think it's larger than that, Sapien. I mean, there's a myriad, and I don't disagree with most of the fundamental points.
Hold on, guys. We're near the end of the show, so let me go to Colin and say, sir, thank you for joining us. Second, what is the single biggest topic you are following for the next 3 weeks? Colin? Can you hear me?
No, I think Colin's dead.
He's not hearing us. He's on camera. All right. So, Nicole, what are you tracking next 3 weeks between now and the election?
The US dollar. Pretty much. The US dollar. Yeah, the US dollar and bonds. And I think that we're pretty close to the top.
Sorry,
Okay, he's back. Just 1 second. Go ahead, girl.
What was US dollar and bonds? Nicole?
And I think we have a top in equities.
Okay. All right, Colin, what are you tracking for the next 3 weeks up till the U.S. election, basically?
Let's see. Well, as I was saying earlier, I think that there's been a massive disconnect again between the cycle and asset prices and the business cycle, and it really depends on how the market can accept that and can let that convergence occur between earnings and asset prices. Whether that's going to result in complete disaster and an 87 style crash, I have no idea again. But it's a question of volatility, and if vol can stay quite calm, because there's a lot of panic going around at the moment, and it's very much a matter of market sentiment. So let's see how that plays out.
Thank you. Sapien, you're dropped in for the last few moments. We've rambled around. What's the most important thing, fixed income, you're looking at in the next 3 weeks?
There's 3 things that I'm looking at. Regulation.
That you can talk about. Let me rephrase that. That you can talk about.
Yeah. Well, if the Wall Street Journal is to be believed, there's going to be a whole host of final regulatory guidance coming out for a wide variety of Dodd-Frank sections. So the top 3 for me is going to be regulation, regulation, and regulation. That's it.
All right. Uncle Bob, do you have anything?
Well, I encourage everybody to exercise their right to vote. I will be voting, as I do in every election. I will, of course, be voting for neither member, not a member of either of the 2 criminal gangs. I will either write in a candidate, which I'm taking names for. If anybody wants to hit my Twitter handle with suggestions, IUU Bob. But I won't be voting for any of these clowns. That's for certain.
All right. So no formal clowns for you.
Nobody from either party.
All right. I'm going to be voting too. None from the 2-party clowns. California mailed the ballots to me, so I don't even have to go to a box anymore. I just drop it in the mail like Oregon did. So on that crazy note, we've reached the stage where we've run out of time. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Stay safe out there. Remember that risk management pays better results than just getting lucky a lot of the time. Because even if you go up, if you don't have risk management, you'll give it all back in a couple of hours. But with risk management, you can grow it forever, or at least as long as you're around to play the game. On that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us. My name is Jack Burns. This is the Macro Tourist Hour. We will be back again soon. I want to thank you and have a great evening.